Soyez bienvenue en France. Welcome to France. But not the France you think I mean. Not France in Europe, and not the France that we visited in our former programs, Martinique, Guadeloupe, French Guiana, and certainly not Quebec, which is not France. But I am standing now in France, and I got here by motorcycle, strangely enough. This is an island. Actually, there are two islands, Saint-Pierre and Michelon, which are off the coast of Newfoundland. I arrived here, and as you can see, la brume, le brouillard, the fog is quite thick. This is a volcanic island. Saint-Pierre and Michelon are both volcanic islands. Saint-Pierre is fairly small, but Saint-Pierre City is larger than Michelon. There are about 6,000 inhabitants here. If you would stay with us for the next program or two, I'd like to take you around these two French islands and show you what France in the New World still looks like. Stay with us.
We're going to start our trip to France in Fortune, Newfoundland. Here we'll take a ferry and travel 16 miles out to sea to reach the archipelago of Saint-Pierre and Michelon. Since we're changing countries, we have to go through Canadian and French customs. The 55-minute boat ride will take us over some rather rough water. The island of Saint-Pierre was formed by a volcano whose dormant peak overlooks the town. This is and has been for 500 years predominantly a fishing village, settled by Basque, Breton, and Norman French people. The realization that I was truly in France didn't hit me at first, but seeing all the typical European establishments, having to use the euro as currency, and hearing European rather than Canadian French, assured me that this was undoubtedly France. The scene of people playing pétanque or boule in the public park also brought to mind images of life in European France.
So this is Saint-Pierre. This is a very small island, only 10 square miles, and the town only does 6,000 people all living together.
Saint-Pierre is an island with no trees, and so the wind is constantly blowing here. To stay in touch with mainland France, the island receives French television by huge satellite dishes on the volcano's slopes. The 6,000 residents of Saint-Pierre all live in town, but many have built summer houses along the shoreline of the island and live there during the summer months. The town only has one cemetery, so people pretty much know where they'll spend eternity. Following French custom, the graves are above ground and are covered by very expensive imported marble slabs that can cost as much as $5,000 each. Although cod fishing on the Grand Banks was the island's main industry for centuries, the supplies have seriously diminished. But still, the majority of the people make their living in this traditional way. You might wonder why the fish sheds and houses are painted in these very loud colors. Well, there are two reasons. First, the returning fishermen can see land more easily in the fog because of these bright colors. And second, the colors give some life to the town during the long, cold winters. Another game brought over from Europe is the Basque game of paleta, a game somewhat like jai alai. The beautiful lace curtains found in all the island's homes, and even at the high school, are all imported from Brittany and France. Another phenomenon which I enjoyed looking at was the various styles of airlocks at the front doors of the houses. These tambours keep out the wet and cold winds which permeate the island. Again, check out the wild colors of the island's houses. Even in the densest fog, they would stand out. So coming home after a night at the local cafe should not be a problem. Here are a few facts about Saint-Pierre and Michelon. The islands were settled very early by Europeans because of their proximity to the rich fishing grounds. France and England fought over them for over 100 years, and they were finally given to France by the Treaty of Paris in 1814. The islands were controlled by Nazi-controlled Vichy France in World War II, but were retaken by the Free French in 1941. These islands are part of the overseas territories of France, and as such, are an integral part of the French Republic. If your family lives on an island, then they had better know how to handle a boat. So the town provides a sailing school for its children. The École Française de Voile provides lessons for all the island's children. And from what I saw, the teachers do a fantastic service to the town. I'm now in the famous Hôtel Roubaix in downtown Saint-Pierre, and I have with us a local historian who would just love to tell us a little bit about how Saint-Pierre and the United States
had a little problem there a few years ago during Prohibition. Sir, what's your name?
I'm Jean-Pierre Andrieux, and I don't think there was really a problem between the United States and Saint-Pierre. I mean, it depends in which sense you look at it, but when the Congressman Volstead had the 18th Amendment pass in January of 1920, the United States became dry. The bathtub gin was the order of the day, where everybody would be blind and killed and by this pretty bad alcohol. So Canada came to the rescue with beautiful rye and bourbon that they would make. People like the Bronfmans of Distillers Corporation and Hiram Walkers and Corby's in British Columbia Distillery.
All good quality.
All, of course, excellent quality. Not the bathtub variety.
Yeah.
And when it became illegal, when the Canada Export Act was amended under pressure from the American government that no direct shipments could be made, or that it could be officially allowed to be smuggled in with the customs having blindfolds on them, they had to find some offshore islands, and Saint-Pierre amongst them, like Bermuda and the Bahamas and Belize and Honduras, where it became official offshore bases where these transshipments could take place. Now Saint-Pierre became by far the largest, where huge warehouses holding hundreds of thousands of cases of whiskey could be stored.
I notice on the walls around here there are many pictures from that era of warehouses and a lot of activity going on.
Yes, there was a lot of activity. In fact, there was a fleet of 80 rum-running vessels, very powerful built boats that were based here, which could carry to the American coast about, on the average, 350,000 cases of liquor per month.
I understand that these rum runners were faster than the American military boats many times.
Well, in most cases, the shipyards always kept one notch ahead, and they would typically leave here, and they would go to the eastern seaboard of the United States, places like Narragansett Bay, for example, where they would transfer large quantities to small shore boats that would come alongside, and initially, they were all being shipped in wooden boxes. These wooden boxes were making noise. They were generally transferring on a moonless, darkness night, and it was impossible to be detected by but their noises, when it was being carried downwind. The noises would be heard by the Coast Guard, and it would be they would get caught. Now, the people that were involved in that were mafiosis, which controlled these operations, and they didn't appreciate getting caught, of course.
Of course.
So they dispatched some emissaries to the islands here to find a solution. And the solution was to get rid of the wooden boxes that made the noise, and to repack all of the items into jute sacks, each with a straw cover.
Making them quiet.
Making them quiet.
And now, what happened to the boxes? I notice there's a picture behind us here of a building here in Saint-Pierre.
Well, there are more steps before that.
Okay, go ahead.
The boxes were repacked, and they were being thrown out of the warehouses, as you can see from the picture above.
Yep.
Thrown out. The inhabitants could pick them up and use them for firewood, or they would also be neatly dismantled, and there is in this corner here,
we'll look at that in a minute.
There is a bundle of boxes which is neatly dismantled, and it would go towards the construction of houses. All the Saint-Pierre houses of the 20s and 30s were entirely built of empty whiskey cases.
Unbelievable.
You can see here the side of a wall that was made out of VAT 69 Scotch whiskey. This was dismantled from a house they were tearing down. And this is the last such remaining house. It's known as the Cutty Sark Villa. It was built entirely of empty Cutty Sark Scotch whiskey boxes. And above here you can see they were using the boxes as shingles also on houses.
Yes.
So they were entirely used, and when the transfer was done, it went into sacks. And in Narragansett Bay, for example, I have found pictures of what they used to do there was to put sponges with oil on the sponges. If the Coast Guard gave chase to the smaller vessel that was taking it ashore, once they were inside the 12-mile limit, they would dump this in Narragansett Bay. The oil would release, a small slick of oil would be released from the from the
sponges, yeah.
sponges, which would leave a very small filtering for many days. And then they had a homemade diving suit, which went down in Narragansett Bay and picked up the precious cargoes.
Very clever.
So this was quite an operation. It lasted for many years until the President Roosevelt put on his electoral platform that he would repeal this stupid, foolish law, which he did when he was elected the following year on the 5th of December 33 came
that
repealed.
put St. Pierre out of business, didn't it?
And it was the saddest day ever. As can be seen from this photograph here, the mock funeral parade of the St. Pierre Truckers Association, leaving one of Mr. Bronfman's warehouses with the American and French flags at half-mast, saying, today it's all over, tomorrow there's no more work. And so ended
the new economy has to start.
The greatest era that this island has ever known.
Excellent story, sir. We thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I hope your viewers have some enjoyment of our little part of history.
I hope so.
This is the only place left made of whiskey cases, the time of the Prohibition days in the state, the time of Al Capone. That is a place is called Villa Cadisac.
Back on the ferry, we're going to journey to the French island of Michelon. Michelon is Basque for Michael, and only has 697 residents. Like St. Pierre, fishing is very important to this island, along with a bit of smuggling into Canada. In the center of town stands the church, the town hall, and the police station. The winters here are harsh and long. The general climate is very damp and windy, but today is a perfect sunny summer day, so let's enjoy. Let's leave the center of town and visit the picturesque countryside. The island of Michelon was formed by the joining of 3 islands with sand dunes and a long sandbar. We're going to drive out along the island, cross the long sandbar causeway, and end up at the southern end of the island known as Langlade. In these sand dunes live a very large herd of free-ranging horses. They are wild, but very used to people. Langlade is a summer colony for the residents of St. Pierre. There used to be one permanent resident here, but he died in the summer of 2006, so only a transient summer population of about 1,000 now inhabit the cottages and camps on the island. These vacationers take a boat shuttle back and forth to St. Pierre. After my stay on the French islands, I returned to Newfoundland, to the city of St. John's, 1,000 miles from Montreal, 2,000 miles from London, and 3,000 miles from Vancouver. St. John's is the capital city of Newfoundland and Labrador, and a major port. The city was first visited by the English explorer John Cabot in 1497. Signal Hill looks down on St. John's and has been the site of many fortifications since the 1600s. At the Battle of Signal Hill in 1762, the French surrendered the town to the British. On top of Signal Hill is Cabot Tower. Today, the Canadian Tattoo fires off a daily cannon at exactly noon. Just south of St. John's is the Cape Spear Lighthouse. It sits on a high cliff above the North Atlantic Ocean. This site is the most easterly point on the North American continent. The lighthouse keeper's home has been restored to its 19th century look and is a great place to visit. Fort Cape Spear was a World War II coastal defense battery from 1941 to 1945 and sported a big 10-inch gun on a disappearing carriage. This is what's left of the site today. I'm now heading for Argentia, Newfoundland, to board the ferry which will take me back to Nova Scotia. Even though all the hotels were filled here, I did manage to sleep on a couch at a former convent, which was quite an experience.
Let's see you guys ham it up a little bit.
Say something for the record. We can do our
Well, it's
song.
certainly nice that you stayed in the convent last night. You needed a little cleansing. We went to the stayed at the lady mansion over there, the 10-story building, and told jokes. Oh, we were bad.
Well, thanks for visiting with us on this particular program of Let's Visit Saint-Pierre and Michelon. I hope you learned a little bit of what exists in North America that perhaps you didn't know before. I hope you stay with us for the next edition. Until then, this is your host, Dave Welsh, saying au revoir.